Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Savanah.
What are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Frozen 2. Cue music. I don't know. When I say Frozen 2, I expect there to be chanting of some sort.
Maybe we can add some chanting in post.
That would be good.
We'll see.
That would be good. Anything you want to say before we get started? Any fun anecdotes going on over on your side of the state line?
A couple of things. I was thinking earlier today that we never actually mentioned that I moved to Colorado and that I'm no longer in Arizona, and that's why our podcast format has shifted a little bit. We never mentioned that.
Well, here we are mentioning it right now.
Yeah. But there was a couple things I wanted to bring up. One is an announcement, I guess, for anybody who might listen to us who also uses the app Letterboxd. I created a list of films on Letterboxd that we talk about here on the podcast. So if you use that app, you can find this list and see all the movies that we talk about, find out how to watch them, get information on them, stuff like that. So
Oh, that's very cool. Does Letterboxd, like if you search a movie, does it tell you where you can stream them?
Yes, it does. It's very useful.
Whoa, that is incredibly useful, actually. Not a sponsor. But I wish we were.
That would be great. So that's one announcement that I had. I had a couple of other questions that I thought I could throw out to you, Ryan. Yeah. The first question is, do you have any predictions for House of Gucci? Like, do you think it'll be good? Do you think it'll be enjoyable? What do you think?
I think it'll be enjoyable. I'm optimistic. How about you?
I think it'll be enjoyable. I'm not sure that it will be good. I'm hopeful. I mean, there's like a definitely good cast in it, which makes me hopeful that it'll be good. Especially Adam Driver.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like he'll really like bring it home. But I do kind of feel like it might be like, I don't really even know what the word would be for this, but like making lines that are like memeable or lines that will be like popular. You know what I mean? Like that clip that's in the trailer where she's like, father, son, house of Gucci.
Yeah.
Like, I just really feel like they put that in because they knew like people are gonna like to make memes out of this.
Right. But I don't know, it might be too memeable. I think it might like push too into the memeable side, like the trying too hard type of dealio, and then it isn't as fun to meme. I don't know. I always like a natural organic meme, like from Twilight, for instance, where it's not intentional, and it's just purely coincidental that the humor is there. So I hope we have a healthy mix of both.
I agree. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, Ryan, is if you have any anime recommendations for me. Because I always kind of feel like this time of year is when I like to, like, sit in and watch, like, a good anime. I'm thinking something like shoujo, something with some romance in it.
I mean, Savannah, if you haven't watched the Fruits Basket reboot yet, my whole family's watched it. Christian's watched it. Even my Colorado side of the family has watched it. I don't know if you're familiar with Fruits Baskets in its original incarnation, but it wasn't as good. But the new incarnation, there's like, it's ended. It's done. There's 4 seasons. It's prime shoujo entertainment. Highly recommend if you have not watched it yet.
Would I need to have seen the original to, like,
No,
get
it starts from the beginning. So it does what they call a full brother alchemist, where it's like it ran and it caught up with the manga and then it continued on. And then they were like, oh, it got really bad. And then they canceled it. And then they restarted it 10 years later. And they started from the beginning again. And then they continued on. So it starts from the beginning. You don't need anything. It's just like a fresh reboot.
Okay. Maybe I'll give that a try. I never saw the original except for maybe the occasional, like, one-off episode. But I do remember Fruits Baskets was, like, one of the first animes I ever heard of, like, as a small child.
Yeah, it's definitely a rite of passage. So you do need to complete that before you die.
Okay, well, maybe that'll be my one that I take on to watch during this season.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, but honestly, you don't really watch it for the plot. You watch it for the vibe. And when you get confused, you just look at the beautiful boys and everything's better.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, but back to the real anime on hand, Frozen 2. So we're discussing another Disney topic. And this one is pretty much as Disney as you can get. And have your feelings at all changed from the last time we talked about Disney, which was, I think, was with Raya and the Last Dragon. Do you remember that? Which was, oh my goodness, when was that? When did Raya come out?
I don't even remember. That seems like another world. Whenever it was that we filmed that a while ago.
Yeah, I literally can't remember either. But another big budget film. I think this movie is very successful in my opinion, and I'm very eager to hear your opinions on it, because I watched this film and I was not expecting a lot, but there was so much to unpack here. So have your feelings shifted about Disney at all since we last were discussing?
I don't think so. I can't say that I've watched a lot more Disney content in between that time. I feel like my desire to go to Disneyland has increased since then, and I'm still really hoping to go sometime soon. What about you?
Yeah, I really want to go to Disneyland. I really, really, really do. I don't know what else to say about that. I think my affinity for Disney has kind of increased. I recently got a Disney trivia game that kind of put me back on the Disney market. One of my roommates was rewatching some Disney movies, like Brother Bear, and like some weirder ones, like Fox and the Hound, just to like brush up on her like Disney knowledge, and I was kind of present for that. So I feel that I am starting to leave some of my saltiness and bitterness behind me, maybe for the worse, and wear those rose-colored Disney glasses a little bit more. So, Frozen 2. Came out in 2019, so that was a little while ago at this point. And it is the 58th entry for Disney, and it's a sequel to the mass hit Frozen that came out in 2013. So it's directed by Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee. But when I watched the documentary, it seemed like Jennifer Lee was kind of like the main person and presence in there, which was kind of cool. I feel like she had a big hand in the film. And there's some big stars in there, like Kristen Bell, Idina Menzel, or as John Travolta likes to say, Aduche Musculin, Josh Gad, and Jonathan Groff, whom I love. And it's kind of a weird plot, I would say, for a sequel. So it starts with Anna and Elsa as they are little, and their dad's telling them a story of two people who entered an enchanted forest, and there was a treaty established with a neighboring enchanted forest, and something happened, and like the forest became cursed, and then the movie picks up 3 years later after the coronation, and they do like a fun little opening song, and Elsa hears this voice calling out to her to find her magic. Maybe, we don't actually know what this voice is, but she feels the drive and the need to follow it, and that's kind of where we take it from there. We follow Elsa and the gang. The whole gang is there to go to this enchanted forest where they discover quite a few things. They see some people of Arendelle trapped in this enchanted forest along with the Northuldra, is what they're called here, which are kind of representative of an indigenous culture of this enchanted forest. They are based off of the Sami people, which are an indigenous group in northern Norway, northern Sweden, from around that area, which is pretty cool. And there's this really big themes of like colonialism and betrayal, and how it was kind of this falsified story about how the Arendellians helped the Northuldra, but really they were betraying them. And we can get all to that later, but that's pretty much the gist. A lot happens, Elsa and Anna discover that they are the bridge between the Arendellians and North Aldrin, and we kind of get a happy ending at the end of all of it. If it wasn't clear, spoilers for a movie that came out 3 years ago, a big, massive hit that came out 3 years ago. So if you care at all, you should probably leave. I feel like a spoiler disclosure is unnecessary at this point, but here I am. So I think Frozen is kind of a charged subject, just in general. So I kind of want to hear your just general thoughts about the Frozen franchise, Savanah.
Well, I feel like from the get-go, we should just address that I feel like you probably have a bone to pick with me about Frozen in general. So I feel like that probably needs to get out of the way.
I don't have a bone to pick with you. I really don't. I that's why I wanted to start here. I keep suggesting that you should have watched Frozen 2 when it first came out, because I told you it was really good. And here you are. I know you didn't see Frozen 2 until maybe a week ago. So that's the only bone that I have to pick with you. That's it.
Okay. Well, because I was just going to say how when I saw the first movie, I didn't really like it. And whenever I say that, then you, always get upset about the movie experience.
Oh, I do feel that. That is true. I do feel like Savanah was not paying attention when we first saw Frozen, the first one. And she wasn't paying attention. And while Frozen is not my favorite movie by any means, not even close to my top favorite Disney movie, I think it's a perfectly enjoyable, serviceable movie that deserves some recognition of yeah, that was pretty okay, pretty good. Where Savanah did not pay attention, did not give the movie a proper viewing, and has deemed it not great.
And I will just say that what happened was we were at the movie theater, we were watching the movie, and I just so happened to be going through a personal crisis at the same time. And that's why I was having to be texting during the movie. Normally, I would not be texting during a movie. That is something that I do not approve of. But this was a circumstance that required that to happen. So, that's what I'll say about that.
It was very distracting. And I also feel like it clouded my own judgment of Frozen till this day. Because Frozen came out in 2013, which was my junior year of high school. And I think pretty much everyone was in Frozen land except for me. And I might still have a little bit of blame for you for that. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you were a senior, because I know I was in college.
You were in college? Yeah, I probably was a senior then. First semester of senior year.
Just know, it was while we were watching the movie, it was one of those moments where I had been going on dates with this person, and that was the moment where I decided to tell them I didn't want to hang out with them anymore. And they were upset about it, and that was what was happening. All around, not a good situation. I shouldn't have just been texting this person anyway. But here we are. I've learned from the experience.
Yeah, if you were in college, it also makes sense that I probably would have been irritated because I had this perception that you had changed when you went to college. Only a little bit, more just you became more distant, and I was kind of irritated with that thought. I mean, congratulations, you did change as a person. Obviously, we all change. But I think I was kind of adverse to change in the beginning.
I also just find that so hilarious because I probably would have only been in college for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah, but you were hanging out with different friends that you were at a very different scene at that point in your life. I remember distinctly.
I know. I was going to the other coffee rush.
You were.
Anyways, so that was I think that might have been the only time I ever sat through the entirety of Frozen 1, and I wasn't super into it, but again, outside things happening. And then beyond that, I feel the only other times I ever watched it was while babysitting a child or something like that, where it was just kind of on in the background. But what I think mostly clouded my vision was the Frozen mania that happened in the world after it came out, and I was I don't like this. That made me not like it, just because it just felt so overblown, over the top, which led to me just having no interest in seeing the sequel or any of the other subsequent little shorts and stuff that came out afterwards. So I never watched Frozen 2 until preparing for this podcast, and I will say I was pleasantly surprised. I did enjoy it more than Frozen 1. I still don't know if it'd necessarily be like in my top of Disney, but I did like it more than Frozen 1.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you've come to this side. My feelings kind of are the same. I was also very much clouded by the Frozen mania. I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand why the world ended and started with Frozen. And I thought with Frozen 2, it was going to be the same thing. Because I don't know if you remember this, Savanah, but the marketing for Frozen 2 was really strange. The trailer that they showed in the theater when it first premiered was that one scene with Elsa on the beach with her hair down and running out into the ocean to try to tame a water horse. And it was like really dark and ominous and mysterious. And I was like, ooh, what is this? But also I was afraid that the world would end and begin once again because Elsa had a water horse, and horse girls control the world as far as I know. I don't know. I thought really that something bad was going to happen again. But after Frozen 2 came out, I was very surprised that it just didn't get as much traction and just push from Disney to sell so many toys and merchandise and everything. It was very weird.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm not that surprised that it didn't seem to blow up as much, especially because there wasn't really, like, introduction of any new, like, major characters, I would say, necessarily. And, like, most of the characters, like, pretty much look the same, apart from some, like, more subtle, like, costume changes and stuff. So I can see how, like, toys and stuff, like, there wouldn't be a whole lot of new things necessarily to put on the market. But it also just seemed less like a kid movie, I guess. I'm using like air quotes. Like Frozen 1 felt very much like children will enjoy this a lot, whereas Frozen 2 felt more like I'm not sure the kids will be as into this as Frozen 1. Largely because of like the darker nature of it.
Yeah, and what was really fascinating is in the documentary that was about the making of Frozen 2, when they did the initial screening, children didn't like the movie, they didn't understand it, but adults liked it. And pretty much what they decided is they kind of have to add a lot more jokes and make it more clear about what the message is. And third, add more of the salamander.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I do love the salamander. I'm always very happy to see reptilian or amphibian representation in my films.
It's an important subgroup to add into films.
Yeah, speaking of which, I was playing a Jackbox game the other day, and one of it was a prompt, and one of the questions was dating red flags, and it was owning multiple lizards was part of the pre-made dating red flags. And is that a stereotype? Am I mad here? Have you heard of this before?
I'm not surprised. That would be said. And I kind of feel like it would be a red flag. No offense. I think it also depends on what the reptile is. If someone owns more than one snake, really, for me, I'm like, okay, that's a lot of snakes. At least for someone I would want to date personally.
Gotcha. No, I understand. It's fine. It's fine. So we'll start with somewhere easy, I think, with Frozen. As we've kind of gotten all this stuff out of the way, I kind of want to talk about the music. So did you have any thoughts on the music? Do you feel like it was all well incorporated? Favorite track? Just general thoughts.
I feel like the music was a little underwhelming to me. Just comparing it to all of the other music in the Disney zeitgeist. Which, it was interesting because I did start watching that documentary you're talking about, Ryan, and the first episode is, largely focused on, at least what I saw, of the songwriters, working on it, which I did find that, interesting to see, their process, but I found the music overall underwhelming. Although I have had, since I watched it, which song? The Some Things Never Change has just been, stuck in my head since I watched it, because I think that was, probably the catchiest one.
Ooh, big yikes. That's the worst song.
Well, it's been stuck in my head.
I really like some of the songs. I think that it kind of suffers from, in the musical world, there's the hit tracks, and then there's the tracks that are incorporated like and woven seamlessly between like dialogue and the plot, and like you couldn't take the song out of the musical and have it stand on its own, right? It needs to be in the musical, and pretty much all the songs are like that, where it's like you can just take it out, copy paste it somewhere else, which is unfortunate. I wish there were more woven songs in there.
Yeah, I did wonder, like, which I didn't even, like, necessarily realize this, but there's another podcast called Sleepover Cinema, and they were talking about High School Musical and the songs in, like, High School Musical 2, and how it was, like, the songs had already existed before the movie, and they just like bought the songs and put them into the movie, and that's why sometimes some of the songs like don't always make the most sense. And I found myself wondering if that had happened with some of the songs in Frozen 2. Like, I wasn't sure. I forget what the like couple, the songwriting duo, what their names
The
are.
Lopez's.
Who, like, wrote, yeah, if they wrote all of the songs of the movie or just like the main ones.
I believe they wrote all the songs of the movie. And they had consultants. They did have some Sami consultants as well that helped design the soundtrack, or like the soundscape, which was kind of cool, what I was reading about of. But for like kind of the main songs, the problem is that the production turnaround time, this movie didn't get greenlit until 2015, and they had just 3 years to get this whole movie made, which is absurd. And if you watch this whole documentary, it's pretty much they have the song Show Yourself. They're really hyping the song up. Like, that Show Yourself song was written pretty much before everything else, and they didn't know how to get to it. So the whole movie was just trying to focus on getting to that song, and they had a whole bunch of cut songs there. Like, one of my favorite songs is Gotta Get This Right, which is a Kristoff song, and it's a really cute, sweet duet, kind of reminiscent of the duet in the first one between Anna and the evil guy, Hans. Kind of reminiscent of that, but like sweeter, and it's about a marriage proposal. Highly recommend you look that one up. Definitely a bop and a jam. But it's like they didn't have enough time for this movie to breathe, especially after the first screening when they had to change so many things. And it's so bizarre. Like, I had no idea that there was so much crunch involved in movie making, and crunch is a term that's used in the media industry for just trying to get things done by a deadline, and you don't care how you get there.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So then Show Yourself did exist, like, before the rest of the movie existed. Because it did kind of feel like that. Like, it felt like the songs were just put there. Like, there wasn't necessarily a lot with them. The one song that I really didn't like was Kristoff's song. Like,
I hated that song. One? Yeah.
Which one? Lost in the Woods? Is that what the song was called?
The 80s power ballad.
Didn't like it. I didn't like it. And I felt like when I was watching, I was like, who is this for? Like, is this for like our parents? Like,
yes.
Not even children today's parents, but like our parents. And are they going to see Frozen 2 like on their own accord? Maybe taking their grandchildren? I don't know. But I was like, why is this here?
Yeah, the answer is the parents, like our parents. And it's the fact that like middle-aged people are the ones put in charge of this movie, and it was something nostalgic for them, and they had to give Kristoff a song once they cut out his original song, which was Gotta Get This Right, which was about a marriage proposal.
Which also, that's like his only song.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Jonathan Groff? He has a really good voice. How do they only give him one song?
This is about women, Savanah. This is a movie about female empowerment.
I'm just saying, like, I feel like they're missing out. I also, and this might be controversial, but I'm going to say it in the words of Trixie Mattel and be controversial yet brave. I'm not sure I love Idina Menzel's voice.
Wow.
I know, I said it, but I you know, I've been thinking about it, especially because for whatever reason, my phone keeps like on shuffle playing the Wicked soundtrack more often to me lately. And I'm like, I don't know if this is like, if I love this necessarily.
Yeah, I understand. I think her voice is really striking, and you can really tell who that voice is, and I think it's fitting in a lot of scenarios. But maybe a 20-something-year-old princess in the Disneyverse was not the best choice for Idina Menzel.
I also think that part of my issue with like the first Frozen, and it kind of came up again with this one, is just being so aware of the actors and having a hard time like not thinking about the actors when like watching the story, like versus just seeing the characters, like really thinking about Kristen Bell versus just seeing Anna. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Kristen Bell's performance is not really a great departure from what she normally does and what like her normal kind of acting attitude is, which is a little bit frustrating. But then again, I did watch The Good Place, and I think that her character on The Good Place, Eleanor, is a lot different than what I normally see her as she is portrayed normally. So I don't know. Maybe she does have a lot more acting range. I don't know. I can't make up my mind about Kristen Bell and whether I like her. But moving on from the music, I guess. You mentioned that Christoph only had one song. And I kind of wanted to move on to like the main criticisms of the film, which are the characters, the music, which we kind of already went over, and then the plot versus the message. So I kind of want to jump right into the characters and how Christoph might as well not even have been there. I just was frustrated by him being there the whole time and having that whole storyline of like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm gonna ask her. Now's the time. And then no. And then now's the time. And then no. And his chemistry with Anna, nothing. And that other little reindeer lad, oh, wonderful chemistry. Wonderful.
Yeah, what I really would have liked to have seen was, like, what I thought was going to happen was that he was going to, like, propose to Anna, but then she was going to feel, like, conflicted about, like, possibly having to, like, leave her sister or something. Because they kept talking about, like, change and not wanting things to change and how she, like, needed to be there for her sister. So I had kept, like, thinking that, like, he was going to propose, like, somewhere in the middle of the movie, like, as part of the climax. And then she was going to be like, well, I love you, but I don't know. And I think that would have been so much more interesting if it had, like, gotten to that point versus just his whole thing of trying to propose but then not being able to, with like a comedy of errors situation.
Yeah, it was awful. And his song really didn't make that much sense in the context of the film. And there's not really much to say about Christoph other than he was just really poorly written for, it feels like, no good reason, honestly.
Someone who I found myself liking was Olaf in this movie.
You know, I was curious.
Prior to this, in, like, the first Frozen and any other, like, supplementary Frozen thing I've ever seen, I have not liked Olaf. In fact, I would say I hated Olaf. Maybe not hated, but I had, like, a visceral reaction to disliking him. But I found myself, like, really liking Olaf and him being probably my favorite character in Frozen 2.
Wow, your favorite character in Frozen 2? Oh, wow.
Yes. I thought he was really funny. Like, funnier than I had expected. I found myself tearing up when he was, like, disappearing.
Wow.
Like, yeah. I really liked Olaf in this movie. What about you?
I liked him better. But it was just such an odd shift. I don't really know what happened. Like, why did they decide to write him that way? Because obviously it was working for them in the first film to, like, write him as just a goofy doof who doesn't think for himself, who, like, you know, haha, like, I have no brain, or do I? You know, kind of character. And this one, they really just went for a whole different existential adolescent snowman, and I did really appreciate it, don't get me wrong. It was just tonally kind of weird for me initially, and I still don't know how I feel about it.
I really feel like his character really makes me feel like they made this movie for adults. Like, they didn't make this for kids. Like, his character combined with, like, some of the other themes, it just really felt like this is not for children, or the children are not, like, the main audience.
Did you like his song?
I did like his song. I liked him overall much more than I would have ever thought I would.
When I saw this movie in the theater, there was a little girl in there who cried during the scene where Olaf disappeared. It was kind of sad sounding, honestly, because it was during, like, the do the next right thing. Like, she was crying throughout the whole song during the sad.
Poor little girl.
Yeah, but he came back. I guess some of the other characters, the first Frozen movie got panned for having an all-white cast. We have some diversity with a black Arendelian and the North Aldrins. Still, obviously, not enough diversity, but I'm not really sure what you can do with an all-white cast moving into the second film, where you need to keep the core characters. And General Matthias, even though despite... He's like on the bad side, kind of, even though he doesn't know he's on the bad side. So that's just kind of frustrating to think about and what they could have done there.
Yeah, he felt like he was barely important. I also, like, he was someone else where when I was, like, trying to think of what could be being foreshadowed, like, I kind of was hoping maybe that he would have a bigger role in, like, going against what needed to be done. Like, him, like, putting his foot in the ground and being like, no, we're not going to knock down this dam. I believe my general was right, or something. Not that wouldn't have been great representation, but it just would have made for a more interesting character versus someone who just, like, barely did anything and gave, like, one little nugget of wisdom to Anna. So, which even, like, seemed like not the best, like, wisdom to be giving. So definitely a disappointing character.
Yeah, very disappointing. And then next, I want to talk about the plot and kind of the general message. And to start this one off, Savanah, I need to know, Savanah, what was the voice that was calling Elsa? Can you tell me, what was the voice that was calling Elsa?
I had been assuming... Well, actually, wasn't it her mom?
I don't know. Is there an answer to this question? It's still unclear. They literally rewrote the film to answer this question, and I still don't know.
It was very unclear, that whole part. Like, yeah, it was very unclear. At my first gut, I was going to say the river, but I'm pretty sure that they showed her mom, like, singing it.
Yeah, they did. In the little dome of lights, they showed her mother there. But I couldn't, I don't know if that was, like, just a projection of her memory or what, or if it was the river, or just I have no idea. Or if it was Elsa herself calling herself home. Just, I have no idea. And I do really like the messiness of the plot. I like that there's interpretation in loose ends and how imperfect the movie is. So there's something about that that's just is really satisfying to me. And watching this movie, it feels like it's full of human error, and there's something about it that I just love. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I'm not sure that it does. I mean, I guess what was kind of good, and I think maybe you're saying, but this may not be what you're saying at all, is that it definitely felt like more true to life, I guess, that it wouldn't be, like, all wrapped up in a bow with everything working out perfectly and everything making, like, perfect sense. Like, obviously it did have a happy ending and there was, like, understanding what was happening in the ending, but it felt maybe, like, the ambiguity in it maybe felt more real to life.
Yeah, I guess the ambiguity felt more real to life. But I suppose I mean more just, when I first saw this, I didn't know how fraught the production was, right? I saw it and I was like, wow, that was a really confusing movie. But I think I liked it. And I think I liked it for what it was trying to do. And then I watched the documentary and I watched the movie a couple more times. And I'm like, this feels just like so many people's passion into this movie, and so many people who have different ideas and identities going into this film. It doesn't feel like just one polished product. It feels like a collaborative effort that didn't quite smooth all the edges and get Disney-fied. I don't know. There's just something about it that I really like to think about, and how this is just so imperfect.
Yeah, it's just so interesting that they would even let that happen. Because you said it got the green light in 2015. I'm surprised that they wouldn't just, like, immediately go into production of the second one, like, right after the first one.
I was reading about it,
that's
and
very strange.
They were pushing more because they thought they would make more money for the Broadway version of Frozen. So they're pushing to get that open first before they greenlit a sequel.
Huh. Interesting. That still doesn't seem, like, advantageous for them, like, financially. Like, they would make so much more money from a movie than a Broadway production. But I don't know, that is strange. It did feel very disjointed, and it felt like there was a lot of times where you just had to trust what the characters were saying and trust that they, like, what they were saying was true without seeing that play out. Like, at the end when Elsa was like, well, a bridge has two sides and you're the other side of the bridge, Anna. Like, how do we know that? Like, how do you know that? Like, did somebody tell you that? Are you just inferring that? Do you just feel it in your soul? Like, where is that coming from?
Yeah. It's because their mom had 2 daughters, Savanah. She says it right in that same line.
I know she says it, but how does she know that? Like, I don't know. It was just, like, things like that it did feel confusing. Like, even by the time that she came back at that point, I think I was still slightly confused if she was the spirit, if she was this, like, bridge, or what was happening.
Yeah, I still don't understand why she got frozen, like, whole again, or I guess Anna got frozen whole last time, but why Elsa got frozen whole while she was going into, like, the whole thing is that water has memories, right? Which is a theme that I've heard before in some kind of fantasy novel, and I can't put my finger on it. Let me know if you have your finger on it. I literally can't. But I've heard that waters have memory. I've heard this line before, and I knew it would come up again. But I don't know why, like, going to seek the truth that far, like, froze her over.
Well, I assumed it was because of the whole thing with, like, in the song, like, the little lullaby, how if you go too deep, you'll drown. But even still, that doesn't really make sense if she's, like, the one who's supposed to be there and is the one who's supposed to, like, gather the knowledge, why she would still drown.
Yeah, no, the lullaby doesn't completely fit.
They didn't really explain why their parents died either. Like, they just showed them with water in their ship. Like, how and why did that happen?
I don't know. A lot of things don't make sense in this movie. But I'm okay with it. I really am. And normally that would be something that I would, like, criticize and harp on and be like, this doesn't line up. I don't know. Something about it is just so excusable to me. I'm not sure. But we can move on to talk about kind of the big representation in this film and how I kind of pitched it to you as the next movie for Thanksgiving. I think this movie should be just, like, Thanksgiving for toddlers, you know, like, whipping this out and teaching them about Thanksgiving. Like, this is a movie that you should whip out. And this was all on Wikipedia when I pulled it up. Like, it said it right here. In the first couple paragraphs, it was like, themes of ecofeminism, anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism, and female empowerment. So Wikipedia really knew what they were talking about, I think, in that section there. I did pull up a peer-reviewed article as well, and I kind of read through that about the representation. And what I thought was interesting in particular is that the bridge conflict, and I'm going to read it here straight, and I'll link the article in the description as well. It's a real semi-indigenous issue in the real world, namely the construction of a hydroelectric plant in the Alta. Oh goodness, it's a river that sounds very Swedish. In a substantial reindeer herding area of the dam would disrupt reindeer migration and traditional salmon fishing, and also flood and displace the Sami village of a maize still. The Alta affair represented something more than concerns for the reindeer and the environment. The demonstration, roadblocks, and hunger strikes that took place in the connection with the Alta affair sparked a Sami ethnic revival. So in this protest to get this hydrodynamic electric plant eradicated, to get that out of their homeland. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it was actually contrived from a real life situation and scenario.
That is interesting. And I do have an appreciation for that. To me, like, going into the movie, like, the way that you had pitched it to me, that was what I was looking for the whole time, was this, like, anti-colonial message or, like, story of the effects of colonization. And it definitely was present, and more present than we've seen probably in any other Disney movie. I think part of it was like I kept comparing it to so many other similar animated movies that I've seen, like with a similar plot line.
You can't compare it to Princess Mononoke. That's just not fair.
But Princess Mononoke does it so much better. Like that would be like the top, I would say, of this storyline. But like even like you said, like for toddlers, like there's Fern Gully, Ryan. Fern Gully I saw as a toddler, and that's like...
I haven't seen Fern Gully.
Well, you're missing out, Ryan, because that movie is like... I just felt like so much more magical, I guess, in the way that it like told a very similar story. And while obviously appealing to kids, because I liked that movie when I was really little. That movie came out, I don't even know when that movie came out. It came out actually before I was born, in 1992.
Yeah, I remember when it was on HBO along with like Thumbelina a lot, and I wouldn't, no. I didn't like the animation style. It kind of was unappealing to me, unattractive.
Side note on Fern Gully, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now, but it has a stacked cast. Tim Curry, Christian Slater, Robin Williams. It was a good movie, Ryan. I highly recommend. But I think what was really lacking is really seeing the story and the effects that it had on the I kept thinking that they were called the same thing because the name is like so familiar. The North Aldra. They seemed like I just would have liked to see more of their actual like stories about their life and like their mythologies, rather than it all coming from the perspective and the memories of the Arendalians. Mm-hmm. Is that how you said it? Like for instance, like they said, like there was the one part where they show the memory of Anna and Elsa's grandfather talking to the other group's leader, and he's like, because of the dam, our land is having problems. And I just would have liked to have actually like seen that versus being like, well, what do you mean? Like what problems? Like are crops not growing? Is it just like, what do you mean? I would have liked to have actually seen more of that from the perspective of those people.
Yeah, I think I agree. That would have been really great if we got to see that. But for what it is, for following the main cast of Elsa, Anna, and crew, I think it did quite a bit. And in particular, what struck me is kind of the false narrative storyline, which I haven't seen in a lot of kids' movies, where you're told one thing and you're grown up being told one thing to later find out that it's completely like fictitious and lied about from people that you trusted and cared about. And I think that... What about Coco? Well, Coco's different. That's not about... It's something different.
Okay.
That's something that's different. Which I do... The Lopez's did have a hand in the Coco music. I didn't know that either. That's not about a whole, like, historical narrative.
What I did appreciate was how Anna, even though she was like sad to find out not only like that there was this like lie about her home and the places she lived, but also about like her own family and her grandfather, that she still was like, I'm gonna break the dam because that's what needs to be done. And that I think is a powerful narrative. It made me think about I had a professor who would always make this joke, who was like, if we really all cared about colonization, we would all just leave. And I felt like this kind of had that same energy of like, well, I learned the truth, and now I'm just going to do what has to be done because that's what's right.
Yeah, in an original draft, they actually just had Arendelle just become flooded. But they decided, I guess, to not go with that and have Elsa come in last minute to save the day, which I think really whiffed that ending. That ending was not what I wanted it to be. I think they could have still had a really warm and fuzzy, happy ending, landing on rebuilding and like restructuring, coming to terms with their past. But instead, it was just saved by Elsa, and it wasn't great. It wasn't great. But again, when Kristen Stewart, that's not her name, Kristen Bell, was coming forward, like, she had the intentions to destroy her homeland, and she had those intentions of thinking, well, Elsa's dead, what else can I do? So, I mean, that was there, but, I mean, it's still a little flat in the end.
Yeah, I agree. Something else, like, not necessarily tied to the theme of colonization, but is often coinciding with things dealing with colonization, but is the idea of, like, the enchanted forest or the magical forest. Mm-hmm. And I was really underwhelmed with the way that they represented the enchanted forest.
Oh my goodness.
Largely because I've seen so many cooler things, like in Avatar or in Princess Mononoke or Ferngully or, like, basically probably any other fantasy thing that has a forest that happens to be magical. Like, it was just so underwhelming of a forest.
Yeah, it was incredibly underwhelming. I like the idea of each of the elements being represented by some kind of living thing. I like that in concept. However, in execution, it just was like, are they one entity? Are they multiple entities? Why aren't they being more disruptive all the time? Like, what is their purpose? Why?
I didn't even realize that was what was happening until you said it right now. Like, the wind, like, I just now in my mind was like, oh, that was because that was supposed to be representing air. Like, I did not pick that up.
Oh,
at all.
Yeah, the fire salamander, the water horses, the wind gale, and then the rock giants.
I figured out, like, the rock giants and then the fire salamander, but the water horse and the gale wind, those went right over my head. And maybe that's just me, but also for children, I feel like that should have been explained.
Yeah. Just another messy end that's not super clear. Yeah, added to the list. So I guess another elephant in the room is the white savior trope. And I kind of want to talk about it just in the context of the film In the Vacuum. Do you think that the trope of white savior was successfully sidestepped by this narrative that Elsa and Anna are descendants of the Northuldra?
I would say no. It didn't feel that way to me. Largely, again, because they did not, like, expand on that really at all. So I found myself forgetting that they were descendants of that group of people. But I think part of it too is that they have, like, privilege, I guess, of being the royal family. Mm-hmm. That, like, gives them still the, like, savior aspect.
Yeah, it does. And I do think a bit of the punch is taken away too, in that they're saving the space, but they're also saving the Arendellians that are trapped in there as well. But it's a little weird. I can tell that they tried. I can tell that they tried to fix it and to not have it be a white savior moment. But it did need to be thought about a bit harder. But the movie's already very long. I don't know how I would... I guess there's a lot of things I would cut out, especially in the beginning. There's a lot of filler in the beginning.
Yeah, like the charades. That didn't need to be there. That could have been a whole story about, like, the indigenous group, about their mother, like, something. Like, it would have been great to see, like, maybe more flashbacks of their mother, like, teaching them other things about the culture besides just the song or just, like, her, like, scarf shawl that she had, like, something like that.
Mm-hmm. But I'm still going to stand by it. I still think that this should be a Thanksgiving movie along with everything else. I don't know, Frozen, I think Frozen, there's something so appealing about it that I think it could really help ease people into these thoughts of colonialism and anti-colonialism.
Yeah, I just wonder, like, how many people are aware? Like, how many people are making that leap? I mean, it's very... I feel like if you're aware of those types of narratives already, like, it's very clear that it's there. But if you are not in a framework of thinking about, like, colonization or decoloniality, I'm not sure that you would necessarily, like, pick it up.
Yeah. I mean, we can hope that the kids who watch this when they're 7 watch it again when they're 14 and have taken their first world history class, and we can hope that history is being taught better by that point, and then it'll all click for them.
That's a lot of hopes, Ryan. I'm not sure. I think it would be better to like. I think it'd be better to just sit your kid down in front of Princess Mononoke and just leave it at that. It might be scarier for a 7-year-old to watch, but it seems worth it to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, Avatar: The Last Airbender or Korra also deals with like very similar themes in a much more like nuanced way. So again, I think that there's much better options than this. But if we're gonna like create a list of all of the content that could be for children, I would say this would go on that list.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Avatar, I think a lot of the vibes are a little bit different. Like, this is more about, like, peacemaking, and it's really not peacemaking. It's taking advantage of someone who doesn't really know the implications of what they're getting into and that knowledge. Whereas some of the other things are, like active malice and no pretenses. So I think there's just like a little bit of flavor in this one that I haven't seen in very many other places.
That is true. I will agree with you on that.
But yeah, that pretty much wraps up all my thoughts about Frozen 2. I'm glad you watched it. I hope you continue watching the documentary because it just blew my mind. Like, I could not believe how much crunch there was and how much these people were expected to do in such a little amount of time. It's crazy. But yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, I really don't think that there's going to be a Frozen 3.
Oh, no.
Like, no, just in watching that movie, and then I just thought it was kind of funny at the end. Like, they kept being like, no, we're done. This is it. Like, in the dialogue. Mm-hmm. Which I was like, oh, I feel like they're really signaling here. This is the end.
Yeah.
This is all there is.
It is sad that we're not going to get... Okay, wait. There is one point of contention we didn't discuss, which is Elsa is a lesbian, Elsa is asexual, Elsa is aromantic, Elsa is all of the above. That is one point of contention that we didn't discuss there, because she's not put away with a man, and like her body isn't claimed or anything like that, and she specifically chooses like nature over kind of civilization, and has that weird place in Disney, which is very odd for Elsa. But I wish they were more explicit about any kind of stance that they were taking. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that one.
I agree, and we did talk about this more in our queer-coded characters episode. But yeah, it felt vague, which I feel like there's an argument for having it be vague, that like there doesn't need to be necessarily an emphasis, but if we are trying to get like clear, good representation, like it would be nice to have it be stated in some kind of way. Like, I was kind of waiting too, like if there was going to be more involvement with those other two like ancillary characters. What was her name? Like Honey?
Yeah.
Something?
Yeah. When they were
like something with her, mm-hmm. maybe. But it was just not really anything. So I don't know. It was left very much up in the air of what could be happening with her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with it. Obviously, I would like clear representation if there's meant to be representation, but I don't think any kind of representation is meant to be there. And I don't think Adina is going to go off the record and be like, yeah, I think Elsa's X. Like, that's how I've always played her. I don't see her doing that anytime soon.
No, and in fact, I'm pretty sure I talked about this in our queer-coded character episode, that I saw something where Idina Menzel was like, this is just about Elsa and being like a strong independent woman, like she doesn't need somebody else in her life, which I do like that. I like how the movie like shows multiple options. Like, you can be single and be like secure in that. You can be in a relationship and be secure in that. You can be a snowman and be secure in that. Like, it presents you with like multiple options, whereas traditionally it's always like you have to be in a relationship in order to have the happy ending. Mm-hmm. So I like that this gives options for people.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a good way of putting it.
That seems to wrap up our discussion on Frozen. We will be going into the holiday season here shortly, so if you have any suggestions of holiday related content you would like us to cover, please leave that in our comments. I'm excited to see what Ryan is going to propose for holiday season. I'm really intrigued by what it is she will pick.
I don't know. Might be the Princess Switch 3. Who knows?
I'm mostly intrigued if you end up picking like a game, like a video game or some other type of game that is holiday, because I'm not familiar with anything like that would be holiday.
Yeah, I don't think I have very many Christmas games in my repertoire. So maybe not. Maybe not.
Well, you will all be surprised with what our next couple of episodes are about. But thank you for tuning in with us this week here on Prickly Pear Primas. Make sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube if you have enjoyed this episode. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and check us out on Spotify.
We appreciate you a bunch, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye! Prickly Pear Primas is produced and hosted by Savanah and Rian Martinez. We are a family production, and editing is done by Savanah and Carina Miranda. Animation is by Carina Miranda, and music is by JJ.